Welcome back to the Organic Rose. Today we're going to do a dish, what I refer to as Lazy Man's Chicken Stew. Extra virgin olive oil that we make from our own olives, organically grown olives that we press. And it's just a really good product. It's very clean, very pure. And I love making my own olive oil. Quite the treat. So I've got a pot here. I'm going to put some heat under it. Let's see. Okay, there we go. I'll put that up on 5. Put some olive oil in it. Not that much. A slog and a quarter is what I call it. Put this up here in the range. Get it out of the way. We're going to let it warm up a little bit. As olive oil heats up, it gets a little bit thin. The viscosity tends to thin out a bit. That's fine. It's going to do what it's going to do, and nothing wrong with that. Okay. How do you know if the oil's hot enough? Well, here's a test. You can take a little, I've got a little bit of water here on my cutting board from these mushrooms that are draining, and you just dab a little bit of water on your finger and kind of just go like that. Flick it into the oil, and this oil's not hot enough because it's not making any noise. If you flick a little bit of water, just a little bit, just a little drop like that, and it starts to sizzle a bit. Remember, oil, hot oil, and water do not mix. A recipe for disaster. You never want to get those together. But in this case, you're just using a little bit to tell yourself that oil's hot enough. It's almost getting there. It's starting to sizzle just very little. So let's go over these ingredients. I've got some beautiful slow roasted chicken. Organic celery. Look at that tomato. Tomatoes out of our garden. I love this time of year. California Wonder bell pepper out of our garden. I've got some maitake mushrooms. Maitake mushrooms are so good. They're farmed in nearby Sebastopol here. And oh, they smell so good. It's interesting because maitake mushrooms and a few of the other varietals as well, 95% of the mushroom use goes to cancer prevention medications. Only 5% or so, maybe 10%, make it to the culinary scene. But most of these mushrooms are done for their benefits that they can offer somebody to try to prevent cancer or deal with cancer. So that's a good thing to have something to help with that. What else do we have? We have some onions that have been julienned and some garlic, of course. And I've got a little bit of squash here. I think I'm going to go ahead and put that wine out of the way. Let's take the squash and go ahead and leave the skin on it because it's very, very thin. We'll just cut it, just cut a slice out of it like that. And then we're going to go ahead and just julienne it. I can hear my oil sizzling now, so I know it's getting close to adding all the ingredients in. Turn these around. So we're just going to dice them up. When you're dicing, for those of you that are new to this, these knuckles right here, this flat part of your fingers, acts for a great guide for your knife, just like that. So that's what you do. You never get the fingernails underneath it or that last knuckle underneath it. You keep the knife against that flat part of your knuckle, just like this. And just walk your hand back on the product, and there you go. You've got a nice dice. No blood, clean knife. And let's set the squash aside a little bit. We're going to go ahead and cut the celery in half lengthwise. This is more of a rustic kind of stew, so other than the squash being diced, the rest of it's going to be not very fancy cut at all. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut the celery on the bias a little bit. You know what? You get a few celery leaves in there. Don't worry about it. Forget about it. Okay, let's get the celery in. Jump back, Jack. Okay. Now let's go ahead and add the squash into it. And it doesn't have to be in this order. I'm just doing it because that's what I have cut up here. The bell pepper. Kind of julienne it a little bit and then we'll dice it on a large dice into the pot. There's a little bit of a rib left in there, so we'll take that out. Sometimes those can add a little bit of a bitter flavor, not very much and not very often, but sometimes. Okay, all the bell peppers in. Let's go ahead and we'll scrape some of the carrot skin off, the peel. Carrots already been washed. All the vegetables have been washed. Always wash your vegetables. I don't care if they're organic or non-organic, conventional or non-conventional, what have you. Make sure that you wash them all. It's very important to wash your fruit and your vegetables. Okay, this again we're going to do on the bias. There we go. Put the carrot in there. And now we're going to add the mushrooms. So those have already been washed. I'm just going to break them up a little bit right into the pot. My Taki mushrooms, these are my favorite. They make great soups, great stews. They're wonderful just tossed with some extra virgin olive oil and some nice tender fresh pasta. A little bit of salt and some parm, or a little bit of cracked pepper and some parm. The parm usually has enough salt in it. Whoa! Got away from me. Just break them up in there. Okay. That's probably enough mushrooms. So if you want to know the amounts, oh, did he use a quarter cup of mushrooms? Did he use 2 ounces of carrots? Did he use, you know, how much squash did he use? How much, was that a half a cup of celery or 2 tablespoons of celery? Or I'm not that kind of guy. So I just put it in as I see fit. I've been doing this all my life, so I know what tastes good and what goes with what, and how much of everything that you use. The only thing I always want to make sure of is that you don't want to use too much salt. Sodium is not good for you to begin with, but also when you oversalt an item, then you're kind of in a log jam, because how are you going to get the salt out? Yeah, there's different tricks. You can peel a raw potato and set it in there and hope that that'll absorb some of the salt. Maybe you put some pasta in there and hope that'll absorb some of the salt and then get rid of that and not eat it. But the trick is to not salt it in the beginning and salt it a little bit later on, just before it goes to the table. Okay, I'm going to let you in on a secret. Now, this can be done with sauces or soups. I use it, or different dishes like this stew. But this is a secret between you and I, all right? Nobody else. These are boquerones. It's a product from Spain, and it is a anchovy, but it's been cured in olive oil and a little bit of white wine vinegar. And that's it. The anchovies have been filleted, so there's no bone in them. And it's a different color. You can see it's a white anchovy. It's not like those black things that you pull out of a can. See that? It's beautiful. So I'm going to go ahead and tear the fillet in half, just gently, because they're very soft. They've been marinating for many, many months, and add those right into my sauce. And you're going to say, what's this guy doing now? Lost his marbles, gone off his rocker, or whatever. No, I haven't. Add that anchovy in there. So what I'm doing is I'm adding these anchovies, boquerones, into my stew And what that's going to happen eventually, as it cooks, simmers with a lid on it, it's going to give that stew a totally elevated level of flavor. You won't taste it. You won't know it's in there unless you're the one that put it in. Your friends that you serve it to won't be able to taste that there's an anchovy in there. They're going to say, oh, no, I don't need anchovies. Don't tell them. You know, forget it. Don't tell them. Just put it in there. It's going to add that other tier of flavor that they're not going to be able to figure out how in the heck he did that. All right, let's set those aside. Here comes a tomato out of the garden. Look at that. These are beautiful. So I'm just going to add a little bit of tomato for color. You can, if you don't have the option of going out to the garden and picking some tomatoes, you can open a can of organic diced tomatoes or whole tomatoes, whatever. I'm going to cut them up just gently. They're very juicy. They just came off the vine a little bit ago. Set those in. Some people like to peel their tomatoes at this point. I'm not that, my palate is not that fine. So some people like to peel their tomatoes and seed them. You know what, I put the whole thing in. It's all flavor, it's all good. And eventually the peels will dissolve for sure. So that's a secret between you and I, all right? Okay, here's a chicken that I roasted nice and slow. And the meat's very tender. I pulled all the meat off the bones. The bones went into a stock pot that you can see cooking right there. And that's going to make a nice chicken stock that we'll have. And now I'm just kind of breaking the chicken up a little bit. Making sure there's no bones in here. Uh-oh. In the compost. Compost buckets can take up to about 25% protein, but I wouldn't put any more in there than that because then it won't start breaking down on you. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and add the chicken to the pot. All boned out, skin off. Man, there's a lot of chicken in there. This would be good tossed with some noodles or over rice. Okay. Okay, now we've got everything in there. We've got onions, we've got garlic, we have a little bit of squash, we have the maitake mushrooms. And if you can't find these in your local market, you can email the company and they'll ship to you direct. The company's name is called Mycopia. They're in Sebastopol, California. Or any other mushroom grower that grows these. You can order them directly from them and they'll be shipped right to your door. We have the celery in there, the carrots in there, the boquerones, the chicken's in, everything's in there, tomatoes. Now is the finishing touch. A little bit of red wine, some vino. So let's add some of that into the stew. I think that's probably enough. Yeah, that looks like that's enough. Wouldn't want to put too much in there. Because you know why? Salud. Mix it up into the stew. Let's add some cracked black pepper just for goofs. So I hope you enjoyed everything. You got some good takeaway. Try these recipes out. You'll love them. I'll catch you next time on The Organic Rose.